Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi everybody, we're back. We actually have part two with Angela and Leah here. I just learned something very interesting. Yeah, when Angela was 7 years old, the family took a different path with communicating. So, Leah, do you want to tell me a little bit about that journey?
Sure. So when Angela was about 7, I was interpreting for a deaf student in the educational system, and that student was going to start learning to cue. And I was informed that I needed to learn to cue or find a new job because that student was moving over. So I went to cue camp, and that first night at camp, there was a big lecture, and deaf adults were talking about their cueing experience and how their lives changed when they started cueing, all these things. And I sat there thinking, wait a minute. In the Down syndrome community, we often sign with our kids, and it's very common. We start signing very early. Myself, I started signing when Angela was born. As an interpreter, it was in my head, so it was easy for me to do. But we encourage parents to sign because our kids, and I'm speaking very general here, tend to learn, acquire speech later because of the oral motor skills being delayed and things like that. So we want to give them communication, so we sign. But I sat in that lecture thinking, wait a minute. We have these hearing kids, and I'm, again, generalizing, hearing kids who are hearing English. Mm-hmm. Why are we signing with them when they're hearing English? So I went home, and I couldn't even pay attention in that lecture because my mind was just going crazy. So I went home with Angela, and I had realized over the weekend, as I learned cue in that weekend, mm-hmm. that I could use cue to maybe help with some articulation problems that she was having, and also just giving her that awareness of sound. And I was home. I tend to pick up things very fast. So I did learn to cue that weekend, not clearly at the rate of speech, but mm-hmm. I learned the whole system that weekend, yes. I think now.
For Angela, did you pick it up quickly too?
No.
I knew you were 7 at that time.
She didn't cue expressively.
But she receptively understood it quickly. Okay.
And it wasn't even a matter of teaching her anything. I think just adding cue gave her that visual representation of sound. Mm-hmm. So my first experience was walking in, and she came up to me and said, "Mom, she wanted to say I have a new shirt." But what happened was she couldn't say R sounds. And she said, "I have a new shit." I know, isn't that funny?
It's funny. Yeah, part of the
journey. You said shit. The word you want to say is shirt. And she looked at me and said, "Oh, I have a new shirt." And she cued it back to me.
She just picked it up right away.
That was my
light bulb moment.
And I was like, whoa. So I started working with some other kids. I remember one girl who was completely nonverbal. She was silent. And her mom just wanted her to say an M sound. So she could maybe one day say mom. And I think she was 6 at the time. I don't remember now for sure, but I went to their house. We played some games, some cueing games, and we did and every I cued, and she would cue it back to me. I'd give her an M&M, M&M, and M&M, and then all of a sudden she looked at me. We stopped the game. We were done. Let's go play. And she looked at me and said, candy. And she had never made an sound. And I didn't do anything magical. It just gave her awareness.
Something visual to make that connection with the sound.
So, you know, add on many years. Now I have 5 more kids who have Down syndrome who have been adopted. All are nonverbal. 2 of the kids are cueing in school, and they use it for acquiring reading to give them some phonemic awareness, and they're using it. Axel in particular is becoming very aware of words and sounds. He's fluent in ASL.
617.
617.
Number 6. Okay, 6 child.
Yeah, Axel turned 18. He's graduating at Israel. And his graduate point next year.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he will, and so Axel now will come to me and say, Mom, and then he gets stuck right there. And I'll say, do you want something? Yes. Okay. Want. And then he'll cue it back to me. So he's using it for reading. The thing that I like best about using it for reading with my kids who are nonverbal is we can see what they know and don't know of their sounds. I can see that he knows that's an sound, because or we can use it for spelling. I can cue a word and see that they know how to spell that word the same as any other kid who's been listening to the sounds for their whole lives. So
it's just listening to you, and your journey is taking a lot of twists and turns. What is some advice that you have for parents who are maybe struggling with communication choices or considering different communication choices? What advice do you have for parents who are going down that journey in the beginning?
So I just had this conversation with another parent who has a preschooler right now.
Oh, preschool?
Yeah. You did that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Is that schools have a tendency for our kids with Down syndrome to push AAC devices, assisted communication devices, like using a communication app or things like that. And parents say, okay, because school is supposed to know what they're doing. They're the experts. So parents say, okay, but parents need to understand and be ready to advocate for their kids that the parents get to decide what communication system they want for their child. It is not up to school. It is the decision for the parents. If the parents decided they wanted to speak Spanish in the home and no English, and they wanted to use Spanish at school, that's up to the parents. If the parents decide they want to use ASL for their child, they have that right to make that decision. I have never seen or heard of a school that just says, okay, fine, no problem.
What advice do you have for parents who have maybe chosen something and the school doesn't agree with it? Then what?
That it is the responsibility of the school to provide the parents with proof that the school's way is the best way. If most of the time school says, we'll use AAC because that's cheaper for school. So I will tell you that all 5 of my kids with Down syndrome who are nonverbal and hearing have interpreters full-time in school. As far as I know, we are the only district in the state that is doing that, providing ASL interpreters for kids who don't qualify for the service.
Was that a tough? I mean, how did you make that happen?
So, the first time I requested that the school hire an assistant who is fluent in ASL. Doesn't need to be at interpreter level, but they need to be fluent, and their skills needed to be assessed by the deaf and hard of hearing program first. The problem was that child was having a lot of behavior problems in school, and I knew as the parent and as someone who's been working with kids with communication disorders that it was a communication problem. This kid was needing all kinds of sensory breaks and spending a lot of time in the sensory room every day. And I said, I think it's communication. So I told the school they had to prove to me that it was not communication. And the only way to do that is to provide the service for a time and would see what happened.
Check it out.
Amazing.
So what happened? What happened then?
So they hired someone, and the time in the sensory room stopped. Just stopped.
Interesting.
And he was staying in the classroom full time.
It brings up a good point. I mean, parents do know their children well.
Right.
No, and you have that sense for your child, what they needed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I am a very strong personality. Mm-hmm. And the school district knows me very well.
So how did you build a bridge instead of burning a bridge?
Right. So a lot of it was knowing my rights as the parent. And because of my background in special ed, I knew my rights. So I knew I had the right to decide on a communication system for my kids. Mm-hmm. I knew I was going to have a problem getting this service for my hearing kids. So that first kid, they provided the service, discovered, wow, it made a difference. We're going to keep it up. The next one, I had the same struggle. It happened a little bit faster. And I said, remember how this happened before with the other kid? Let's try it again. The third kid, it wasn't even a question. When I informed the district this kid was coming, they said, okay, let us know the start date so we can hire somebody. The last one was just not even a big deal. Now our district is doing this with most of the preschoolers who have Down syndrome and other communication disorders. It's an option for the parent.
So you led the way.
Yeah, so what they did is they created a new position within the district. They call it deaf and hard of hearing assistant. So they're not certified interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
They are assistants fluent in ASL. Their skills have been assessed, and they are paid at the interpreter level. So it's really, if you remember back years ago, a slash job. That's what they have.
But I think it's a good example of a parent knowing what's needed and, making things happen and working with your team, and the team understands the need. That's an amazing thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are parents who an AAC is going to be the better option because they don't use ASL and they don't have the ability to learn ASL, or their kids' ASL skills are just going to bypass them and they're not going to know what's going on. For myself, I don't happen to like AAC because my kids' vocabulary is limited to what's been put into that machine or that app. So I don't like it for our household when we're signers here. So, but for other parents and other families, it's the better option. So it's up to the parent to decide what they want for their child, and to really push for that with their school district.
Wow, I'm glad you shared that. That's really an interesting insight on the journey.
I will tell you, to get our district to use Q with my kids was a whole different discussion.
Really? So what happened with that?
Well, it was the same as before when I wanted to use ASL. Now they're going, wait a minute, now you want us to add cued speech for these kids with Down syndrome? There's no studies on that. There's nothing to support that for kids with Down syndrome. Nothing has been done. And I said, well, if you look at what's happening with my kids in reading, this kid is ready to start reading, and he should be spelling now and doing, spelling tests. How are you going to assess that? Well, true. So we played with it. I spent a summer teaching that kid Q, and very basic, just single sounds was it. And so in the fall, that kid was able to cue individual sounds. And so it took some encouragement. So there are now, I think at that time, there was only 3 CLTs in our district. Now, I think there are 10 people in the district that are certified CLT. 3 of them work with my kids. Cued language transliterator. And so they're certified and working with my kids for reading now. And we're seeing success. So
sometimes we don't know until we try.
Right.
And then it takes off.
Yes, and it's important for any parent to say, okay, I want to do this right now. And you can change your mind later. You can say, you know what, we tried it, it's not working. I tried ASL with my kids, it's not working. I want to switch to AAC. Or we're using AAC, I'm not seeing a lot of success, I want to try ASL. You have the right to change your mind.
That's a good piece of advice. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Angela, you want to add anything?
I'm good.
Anything? Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Bye for now.
Yeah.